Good?
Yeah.
All right,
Council meeting.
let's get down to it. Let's dispense with the Pledge of Allegiance. First Department is sitting at the table, so you folks have the floor.
So, we came out with our budget for fiscal year 18-19. It falls pretty much in line with the business plan. There's really not any significant changes. The one thing that's happened since the budget committee met about a month ago, and then the board passed it. And at the same meeting, about 3 days before the board meeting, we found a used ambulance in Pennsylvania. This ambulance is a Horton, which is top of the line. Is a 2012. It came with equipment that was in our long-term capital improvement plan, which included a power lift and a power stretcher. And the power lift literally picks up the stretcher and pushes it in. It has a 500-pound capacity, so you can literally load a patient with one hand. That was in our long-term capital improvement plan. The truck had 44,000 miles on it. Has a ton of life in it. The board approved the purchase for $85,000. We purchased that ambulance this past Friday. What that does, it's not, we had left 20,000 and change in our budget to go towards capital improvement. What this does is we are no longer seeking a new ambulance in 2020. This ambulance will preclude that. We're looking at a 7-year loan at 3.75%. That needs to be approved by the board, but that was the cheapest rate we found with the Lisbon Credit Union out of 3 or 4 different banks. Puts our monthly payment at $881.10. That puts the money that we were going to put towards the new ambulance in this budget towards this ambulance. We've been having numerous problems with the red and white ambulance 402. We just had to put a transmission in it, and we've been having some electrical problems. That ambulance would be good as a third or a backup, but it's not good as a primary ambulance anymore. What happens to that ambulance is yet to be determined whether we keep it as a third or the board decides to sell it. The big thing with purchasing this ambulance is the money. It's not going to change our 1920 what we're asking for because of existing capital improvement at what we're asking for from the towns and the increase in payroll. It's going to affect 2020 on because we had budgeted in our business plan $48,000 a year for payment on a new ambulance, and now we're going to have a payment of roughly $12,500. The other thing is this ambulance overall is going to cost us roughly $90,000 between interest and principal over the course of its term. And it's precluding almost $43,000 in capital improvements because the power lift we had budgeted for 2022 or 2021, and that was $23,000, and the power lift was 16. The power stretcher.
Power stretcher, it's about 40 total.
Yeah. So we've just taken $40,000 with this one purchase. We've taken $40,000 out of our capital improvement plan. So we're looking at saving, long term, it was a big savings for our long-term budget. Getting the new board up to speed and trying to move forward. So the next board meeting, we're planning on starting on our business plan. But we will not be asking, when we came to the towns with this plan, it was our goal that this is the absolute worst case scenario. And it was the worst case scenario. The future looks much better. We're going to continue to work on that. It also gives us a little bit of room to start fundraising. Instead of 2 years trying to come up with the money for a new ambulance, we now have more time for fundraising and grants for capital improvements and for trying to get this number down in the future.
Perfect. Do you guys have any, where the budget's already here, we already know what the number is for this year, do you have any goals for the coming year that you might communicate with us?
The major goal is trying to start, we've already talked about some fundraising campaigns. now that we're not trying to survive every single day,
Yep.
and keep our head above water, that is the major goal, is fundraising. We are looking at other options that we have not presented to the board yet because we're still researching it for additional income. When we fully, hopefully in the next 3 months, hopefully by the next board meeting, we'll be able to research that enough. It may be September, but we're working hard on coming up with new ways of bringing in revenue.
Perfect. That said, we are asking departments to get back to us in the November timeframe, so we'll let you guys just plan on being included in that. Just give us an update on where you are towards that goal, just so we actually can stay on that. You already talked about the budgetary issues. Anything else that you would have in your presentation tonight?
We would just like to thank the towns of Lisbon and Bowden. They worked with us. They had the foresight to help us out. At no time do we feel like you were after us. It looks like a very good long-term relationship, and that's what we all look forward to. The other big thing is without the town's help, this new ambulance has a lot of safety features that our old ones didn't. And without the town's help, that would never have happened. So the towns of Lisbon and Bowden just made it safer for our providers and also all of our patients.
Thank you. The last thing that I saw that I went through, you guys gave us a ton of information in the presentations. The one that I was going through was, all the different data towards number of calls, times, and all that kind of whatnot. I noticed that 15, 16 is the last year. Is there any more information that would be updated that you'd be able to provide us at a later date?
Jim could probably answer this, but the main EMS system changed their software program. It used to be called MEMSR. They changed to a new software program called MEFRS, and it's been incredibly difficult to get.
The same information.
Yeah.
And they didn't merge the data on the new program and the old program, and they're locking chiefs out of the old program, so chiefs across the state cannot go back into the old program to collect data.
Okay.
So you have no historical data to.
State is not giving us access to it at this point. There's a bill before the state legislature to release that information to service chiefs in the region. The governor did veto it, and the legislature has to override it.
The one that I'm focusing on right now is response times. One of the things that clearly comes out of this from day one is response time from Campus Avenue or Russell Street is not acceptable to me. The fact is that's like a 45-minute turnaround. I use that as a specific because I'll give the specific. My mother unfortunately fell again. You guys were out of service on another call, and that was the response time. I also was sitting at Frank's Friday night and saw a call that actually was approaching 25 minutes before an ambulance showed. Where I was going with that is knowing the fact is by having this resource in town, we're minimizing that to anybody that we're now putting a dollar figure on the fact is response time from Russell Street. So anything you guys can provide moving forward for what we're doing to bring that number down, that's going to be huge to help us help you educate people what we just did here.
The Channel 8, was it Channel 8 or Channel 13?
Channel 13.
Yeah, Channel 13 did a response time, and we can present that for you, get that information to you. And we were in the top, I'd say 10%.
Yep.
In the state.
That to Diane, we'll get that on the town website.
And one of the goals I missed for us for the future is obviously trying to get more people on the service, increase our membership. We want to increase the townspeople. It'd be nice to have more providers in town because that would allow us to roll the second ambulance. The problem we're having is it's a lot of money to become an EMT. It's a lot of time. It was funny because I went down to Pennsylvania to pick up that other ambulance, and it was an all-volunteer, it was another 501c3 all-volunteer service, and they're struggling with what to do for the future. And I could have slapped Lisbon Emergency's name on an ambulance service 450 miles away, and they had all the same exact problems as we did. But one of the things with their service is they have a lot of people over 50 and a lot of younger people. That middle age area is just hard to find people for them to volunteer and to run the ambulance. But their CEUs, the continuing education hours that they have to do to maintain a license, is only 24 hours in 2 categories. For an EMT basic in Maine, it's 52 hours over 10 categories. So it's impossible to do 52 hours of continuing education and relicense. It takes upwards of 80, 90 hours. So the time constraints is another big, on the training end, is another big issue for getting people on the service and to get them the license.
For the amount of pay coming back.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Right.
To go
I remember that dialogue with you guys. Any other questions of Lisbon Emergency, guys?
Congrats on the new bus.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Towns, for that.
All right.
Want to do my goals first?
Absolutely.
So as we developed the budget this year, we focused on cross-training and succession planning for most of the departments. And as we lose people, or people retire, or if they get done and we hire new people, that's always an opportunity for us to do some type of cross-training or reorganizing. And we've been doing a lot of that throughout all the departments. So you'll see that throughout the budget. And that's going to continue. Open communication between the manager and department heads and staff. There's always room for improvement. I've seen a lot of improvement in the last year, and we'll continue to work on that. I want to also identify efficiencies within departments and promote collaboration between the departments. I think you heard from Diane Netto earlier where she reached out to Mark on the summer school program for her summer reading and try to tap into some of the kids that he has during the after-school program and to work together. And I can see some other areas where we can do that. You just most recently approved a full-time parks maintenance person, and there might be an opportunity to see if that person can do the shoveling at the library. And even here at the town office, because especially the town office, that puts a lot of burden on the public works crew when they should really be out with the trucks. So, that's something I want to explore. I don't know that anything will come of it, but I want to explore that. Continue to increase transparency. I think our new website is doing that. The more we get out there, the more Lisbon alerts, any type of information that comes across our desk that we feel is valuable to the residents. We're trying to get that out there. And by doing that, we're trying to improve ways to engage the citizens' involvement and disseminate information. I think the most recent one we just did was the Western Maine Transportation. They've got that survey going out, so hopefully we get some feedback from that. I want to continue with department training. We've had a lot of turnover, so we need to do more training, and also we need to be in compliance in case we have a DOL labor audit and safety audit. I think, it's been a while since we've had one. It's been about 8 years, so I think we're on the radar. Ordinance review and ongoing. We've been doing that since I've been here. I'd like to look at all the ordinances and update them and review them. I mean, the big one that we just did was the sewer ordinance. That took a long time to get that done, but we got it done, and I think we made some improvements. We had some issues with sewer abatements that came up within the last 6 months, and we were able to address that in the ordinance, so that made it easier. And then the personnel policy review and update ongoing. I've seen a few things in there, but I don't want to keep bringing it back to you piecemeal unless it's something we absolutely have to do. But I'd like to do a complete revamp just to make sure that we're on target with all the laws. And so that's one of the other things that I want to look at. I'd like to say the ordinance review and ongoing, I could get that done in a year, but it's not gonna happen, not with everything else that happens in the course of a year, but we've been plugging away at a few ordinances, so if we can keep working at it, those are all goals. Any questions on those?
Your budget reflects those goals?
Yes. Yes. And the big one is the professional development. It used to be, I think when I first came here, up to like almost 2,000. I ended up dropping it back because I just haven't been able to get out to get training. The training I do is for my certifications. But now that we have a new person in the HR office, we need to do some of the HR training, so I've bumped that back up. Plus, we need to get the HR manuals, and we did that this year, but we ended up charging that off to all the different departments because I didn't have enough in my budget to do that. And then the, obviously, the benefits are a big part. As we go through these different departments, there's going to be some changes to the benefit, the health insurance lines, and possibly to the HRA under the insurance. As we fill the positions, we're going to be making some changes to those, but I don't want to do it piecemeal. I want to do it all at once and give you a fresh budget. So outside of the professional development and, you know, your pay and benefits, there's really virtually no change to the budget other than the printing. Oh, you know, that's one, the printing, I'm going to go up $100 on that because of the town reports went up a little more this year.
So you gotta bring it to 1,200?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Is that what that essentially pays for? 'Cause
That's
you hit
what-
one. I looked at the fact that with Council Crawford, he usually picks up the one with 0 year to date.
Yeah.
And that has nothing in that column. so I
No,
was
it's because
wondering
we
why we're
just did the
increasing.
town reports and the bill is,
1,100?
yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if that's on the budget report I just ran.
It is.
$64, something
Is it,
like
has it been
Yeah,
taken?
the balance for,
So-
as of today, is $7.30.
So when
Yeah.
it's spent, okay.
So I just gave you an updated budget to actual.
Oh, $7.
The next one is the grants match.
Oh, before we
Oh,
jump,
I'm sorry.
the one that stands off the page here as a new item would be overtime, if you would. I'd like to hear on that because it's my understanding with Megan coming in, we have historically the last 3 years no overtime. Where's the overtime going to be coming from in this department now?
It is for her hours that she's working over and above to get the job done. When Jody did it, she always took the comp time because she liked to have the comp time. Megan likes it too, but she's creating too much of it, and we're not allowed to keep over a certain amount on the books. So she's running out of, so in order to keep accruing comp time, we have to end up paying out in overtime. So that's where that's coming from. Unless you want to increase the comp time accrual in the personnel policy, then maybe we could,
What is that policy?
is it-
Let's
I'd
I
have to
can't.
look up.
Can we put that on the list
Yeah.
for a future discussion?
Yeah.
I'm all for allowing it to be on the books.
Yeah.
It's not a significant amount on the budget, it's just, it stands right off the page that we haven't historically been paying overtime, and then now we have a budget line item.
Well, I'm gonna ask the question, if there's a need for overtime, and I know it's not a large sum of money, but still, if there's a need for overtime, and she's already running into the red, if you will, in the comp time, is there a need for a part-time position to help there? I mean, are we at that point?
we are.
That's a question we got to ask ourselves. If we're dumping this much work on one person and they're already stretching, rather than change a policy to accommodate to give her more comp time, why don't we look at it honestly and saying, are we doing the best possible service that we can, or do we need another body because the work is too great?
I would even go one step further to play the cold fish in the room. The fact is, if one of the goals is cross-training, let's force the issue and make the cross-training a reality.
Right.
Have someone, yeah. The,
Because it's not an additional body, it's somebody that's already worked
I-
in the building.
right.
And put to work elsewhere.
Which we are doing.
Right.
It's the problem.
Yeah, and I know you are.
problem-
I know you are.
The problem we've had is we haven't been full staff for a long time.
Right.
And we just hired another person, so it takes
Good.
time to get, and, you know, it's,
then I
It's been
think
ongoing. I mean,
I think it's a lot easier to swallow that overtime piece of knowing there's light at the end of the tunnel, and this isn't going to become something, as you mentioned, Alan, that continues to just grow and grow and grow, and there's no end in sight.
right.
The next one, did you have one? Go for it.
Yeah, just, and maybe just a clarification, is the difference in the admin as far as from 18 to 19, the $4,000 difference in that, is that?
That's the difference in what the job entails now. That's also the administrative assistant, HR, deputy tax collector, and deputy treasurer.
Going back to this point, I mean, my biggest concern is when we actually have a position and we actually load up more stuff on them and we give them more money, then we got to start paying them overtime because they don't have enough time to do it. It just seems so that's maybe not the correct fit. That's all. I mean, if I say I'm going to pay you more to do more, and now you got to paint all the hydrants, but you got to charge me overtime to do it. And again, it's one of those things. It's all logistics on how you work out, but it just seems odd that when we actually pay someone to actually in the year to give them more salary to do more work, and then we got to pay overtime because they don't have enough time. That means either we're loading them up too much, and maybe that figure might have been better off the 4,000 plus overtime for a part-time person than not overwork a person. That's all.
I'm all for efficiencies, especially when we look at when somebody leaves and you look at reorganizing and try to make it easier on everybody and save some money. But at the end of the day, if we got one person wearing 4 hats and they're not getting it done, then there's stuff slipping through the cracks, A. Then B, if that person goes down or out, it's not one job that's gone, there's 4 different jobs. And then everybody else has to try to figure that out, and nobody's got the cross-training. So
But we are
I know, but I'm just saying we really got to look at that. I know we just had someone leave, and so we took a look at how we wanted to, maybe
And the
redistribute
person
some of that work.
that's cross-training for that office as well is fairly new, hasn't been here that long, so it takes a while to.
Right. So I think we should really look at that when we cross-train. It's not just about having one redundancy. It's about having that one redundancy, and then after we get that person up to speed, slide another in. I think it's plug and play. I think we really should look at the staff out there, and I realize that could equate to if I'm looking at it from who we're going to pay. Let's incent the people who are working right now and in one role and saying you want more opportunity for compensation. Get on board and get comfortable with doing a couple of different jobs, and that's and then from there it's a lot easier for us because you got people who are actively engaged and want to be doing the gig and saying, hey, I like the idea of shadowing Megan doing this particular role. Whatever works for you guys when you're figuring that out.
And, to be quite honest with you, the HR part of it takes up an awful long time, especially with all the turnover that we've had. It takes a long time.
Not just the turnover, the ACA portion
And
of
the
it.
ACA portion and
Well, one of the things that I would point out
then
here
the
is
new software that we're going to have to go to.
because we just looked at this, we also missed an opportunity to make this person exempt that overtime wouldn't present itself. That's, to be fair, that's true. That could have actually just as easily been that route. When you're putting that in there, you're above the threshold, it meets the criteria for an exempt employee, that could have been the package to be able to move it forward.
When you say exempt, you mean salary?
Correct.
We had talked in the initial stages of the budget about putting in a part-time position in this, maybe combining it with the assessing and whatnot, and then we took it out. Is that something you'd like to see back in?
I still think that you're probably within that to be able to be considering the cross-training all the way around. I think that's probably the correct approach rather than to throw a monkey wrench at you in midstream and the way that you guys are rolling this out. I just bring it up that we could have gone that other route. That's not to detract. I think that what we've tried to do to date is the budget supportive of what your goals are and working backwards from that to be able to demonstrate to the public why the budget is presented the way it is.
I mean, I think the question would be not so much for us budget-wise, but actually more for like Diane saying, this person's wearing that many hats. Are they actually doing the initial job they're hired for correctly and efficiently?
Right.
Or if that's being deficient, then that's where you got to start looking at bringing other people on. Because their main job, I'd assume, is pretty straightforward when she was hired, and these extra things coming on, if they're deterring her from being able to do those correctly or making you fall behind because now you're actually doing stuff that actually someone else could have done before, you know.
And I agree with that, but the issue that we have right now is we've got so many new people, I don't know how to quantify that. If everybody had been in their places for a while and everybody was trained in everything, I could answer that better. 6 months from now, it might not be an issue, once everybody's trained. I mean, Lydia and Carrie are going to tax lien training tomorrow. I mean, outside of Megan and I, we're the only two that are trained in tax liens. But we have new staff, so we're doing that. 6 months from now, this might not be an issue. The overtime might not even be an issue once we have people that are trained.
The overtime isn't, I mean, a $500 figure over the course of a year is pretty
Yeah.
pretty small. It's just more the idea of just loading on staff on stuff that actually
And you're
is,
right, and right now it's difficult. There's a lot on a lot of the staff right now, but a lot of it's because everybody's new. And
Frankly, I picked the topic knowing it was Diane's budget.
Thank you.
Because it's going to play itself out through all the finance. I'd rather do it right at the start.
Yeah.
To actually have it.
I mean,
be
I'd
about
love
the
to
whole topic.
sit here and say that we could use another full-time person and take that 20-hour position for assessing and another 20 for the rest of us and put a full-time position on, because it's a lot easier to hire somebody full-time than it is to hire somebody part-time.
Yeah.
qualified people.
Exactly, and then you got to pay them if you want to keep them, and that's the issue we're having, is because we're training them and then they're going somewhere else.
That's the
other
kicker
part of
right
it.
there, is that
Yeah.
the amount of money that we spend to recruit and hire somebody and
Yeah.
train them.
Yeah.
Any company will tell you that you quantify that cost associated with that, and then once they make their bones, so to speak, and have that experience, and they look around and realize that they could be making, a couple bucks more a year somewhere else, they're gone, and we're the one left holding the bag for the training bill.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The only other item that I had on this budget that you didn't already address, Diane, was the mileage. The only reason I bring the mileage up, last week's discussion I think was a great one. If we have a car in the pool to be able to be available, maybe just look at mileage across the board to be able to see if there's any of that to force the issue. The fact is, I'm not expecting as considerable savings, but if we got something sitting down to PW, it shouldn't just be a PW asset.
Right.
It's available to be able to get anybody with training if we could coordinate that.
Yep. No, I agree.
Anybody else have anything with this division, guys? Keep going.
So the grants match, depending on what you end up doing with the Dingley TIF, is what we had presented earlier to you for the amendment. We had a line in that TIF that we could use TIF funds for grant match. If we end up going down that road, I would just take this out of the budget. There's no reason to raise that 5,000.
My recommendation for as little money as it is, that line item goes to zero.
Okay.
We can always come up with $5,000. It's unfortunate to be able to say it, but that's what undesignated is supposed to be tapped for.
Yeah. Depending on what happens with the health insurance lines throughout the budget, it could possibly change the HRA line. Right now, that's the worst case scenario.
Yeah, I hit that one. I had
The
knowing you only have to replenish, I had a target figure. If we could save $10,000 on that, that's
Yeah.
at least a start in the right direction.
Right, and the reason it's up so much is because we've had a lot of,
personnel.
well, not only that, people that had the buyout are no longer taking the buyout and they're taking the insurance, so we had several of those. So
Okay.
that increases that. So it's not just the increase in the selection of coverage, it's going from the buyout. But you know what you might want to do? You know, it would be worth your while to, I don't know if it would help, is to increase the buyout. When you're talking $3,000 for a buyout, I mean, if you increase that maybe to $5,000, you're still saving a lot of money because for what you're paying out in
5,000
insurance.
versus 14,000, is that what you mean?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, back in the day, I think 3,000 was a good figure, but it isn't now. Not with the health insurance cost, but that that would be a policy change,
Can the
but
two
it
of
might
you look at
incentivize
that?
them.
Look at,
When was the $3,000 put in play?
30 years now.
It's been there since I've been
We're
here.
right
I
on
don't know
time.
how long it's
Yeah,
been
but you haven't been
like
here 30 years, so that
No, I
works
know.
against that argument. So
It's been a long time. The biggest thing is it's just the outside pool of insurance is getting so crazy that municipality, that insurance here actually looks better and better every
It
year.
does.
That's the problem.
Yep.
You mean so?
if we, I
I'll
would
also look at what comparable buyouts or what's going around in the.
6.
Is it 6 for Lewiston?
That's the starting point for
Yeah.
Lewiston.
Yeah.
But I would be totally down with that, because if you've got to at least make it worth the employees worthwhile, then they can run the math on what it is to actually be covered under their spouse's plan or elsewhere, and they get the $6,000 in their pay anyways.
Yeah.
By all means, I would be down for that for a future discussion.
See it more comfortable what their deductible would be on the other end if they were going on the spouse plan, right?
They could go on their spouse's especially if they're a young couple, they can go on their spouse's plan that has the higher deductible, knowing full and well it's covered out of the buyout from their other spouses. Yeah,
But
it's a win-win.
rather than armchair in that, Lydia, I'd empower you to be able to see what's out there and make a recommendation to us, by all means.
And then I still don't have the new figures for our other insurances. I've built in 5%. I think that's going to be okay, except for the vehicle insurance because of all our new vehicles. So that's not factored in because that wasn't in the 2018 figures. So if I did a straight 5% off in that, it's not going to be enough. So I think that will be the only one that will have to change. Are you going to do anything different with legal? I mean, we're still using Dan a lot. We've had a lot of things come up that we're dealing with, so I want to leave that the same.
Is everybody cool with that? I mean, the history here is we went from 75 down to 40?
Yeah, I wouldn't go any more than that.
How was it last year? I mean,
Well, we're still,
still in the red.
right now, I don't know what we're going to be.
What's the line item now, Lydia?
The remaining balance for this year is 22,000.
Yeah.
Last year's actual was almost 54,000.
As a,
The bus service, Western Maine Transportation, they didn't ask for an increase this year, and as you know, they're doing that survey, so they've got a lot of good things happening with their service from that study that they did. I guess they're getting a lot of ridership going over into Western Maine. So I think you'll see in another year or two, they'll be expanding that down to Brunswick, Topsom, and beyond to Bath. The miscellaneous public service, the Historical Society, Lakeville Memorial Day, and MMA all remain the same. The general assistance, that's gone up significantly. She had a lot of people use the general assistance this year. We're not unusual. All of her clients that she deals with in Brunswick and in Bath and here, I don't know what's happened in this past year, but a lot of people are using general assistance, and so I've bumped that up. She told me to put it at 25,000, and we get 70% back from the state, so you'll see an offsetting revenue.
We did actually get that last year. I mean, we did actually,
And you'll see this year we're already overspent 7,800. So she's using it.
Let's see what else is under mine. Then the county tax and the PSAP fee. Obviously, the county, you can blame that on Alan.
Yep.
And then the
No, we
PSAP.
got Mark. I blame you. You're the chair.
I would too, because I enlisted you. I appreciate that.
And the PSAP fee went down a couple of dollars. And then the abatement, we're going to leave that at 10, just in case there's anything out there from the commitment.
if we, is there any big abatements going on right now? 'Cause you won't be
We have one that has,
potential.
it's still going through a process, but it's a big one.
I mean, would that cover if that's a concern? Can you pull out of that designated funds to actually take care of that if that's a concern, or is that just got to be found?
It would probably come from overlay.
From overlay?
Come from overlay first, and then the remainder from undesignated, if it goes anywhere.
Just on,
The overage just basically closes the fund balance next year anyways, and you
Right.
get back to the same
Exactly.
place the following year.
Yeah.
Right.
but this one company they're doing it everywhere, so.
Yeah,
we'll,
but I'm just saying that for what, big companies pay, the 10,000 is a small number compared to.
I mean, excuse me.
I mean, for the amount that, for a typical homeowner, 10,000 would be a lot, but for big companies
Right.
that pay in, hundreds of thousands of dollars, 10%,
Yeah.
$10,000 doesn't go
No.
very far in an abatement, but.
No, and really, this is for the smaller ones. She has a number of abatements she will do throughout the course of the year. Sometimes it's followed with a supplemental tax, so it's a wash, but these are for like any types of errors in the assessment.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And typically, we don't go over that. We did last year because of the reval, but we had bumped that up a little bit. But she also had, you'll see the expense side went up, but on the supplemental side, you'll see we also had supplemental taxes to help offset it. But typically, 10,000 is enough to cover it. I don't know what we've spent to date, but that's all. How much?
18.
18,000?
Yep.
But, like I said, some of that's
the
offset with abatements, so.
With supplemental revenue.
I mean, it's supplemental because it might have been assessed to the wrong person, and then she had to reassess it as a supplemental to the right person.
As long as you're all set with it, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that all for town?
Yep.
Code? You gonna start with yours or Board of Appeals, Dennis?
What's that?
You gonna start with yours or Board of Appeals?
Just go right down in order. Code enforcement first, I think.
Okay.
You'll go pretty quick with these, so you can slow me down or whatever discussion you want. But
Let's start with your goals, sir.
goals is do my job,
Hey.
my job better. I think one of the goals we talked about, one of my focuses this year is going to be, or already is, and it's going to take most of the year to get through it, but it's the 196 corridor is pretty much my main goal to try to take action on some long overdue issues. If anybody's noticed, you'll see one, the biggest one coming into town already that's been cleaned up substantially in the last few weeks. It's got a little bit more to go, but trying to get some of those places under control, signage, old dilapidated signage, abandoned signage, stuff like that, just trying to clean up 196. A lot of it's going to be on Public Works as well, on some of our own signage and stuff that's outdated and faded. You can't even read it, and poles, and just a cleanup 196 effort is to follow up on the 196 plan that we did, the master plan, and a lot of the stuff that we're actually doing on 196 right now. So I've kind of made that as a major goal and focus, and already hitting that pretty heavy right at the moment. So, and the next wave of dangerous buildings, there's 4 or 5 coming at you, so we'll have to go through that whole show again, but these are some critical ones. One is very concerning to me, very upsetting to me. I guess it's not really budget stuff, so I don't want to get too far off track, but we are out of time on taking action on the historic building that we have in town on the Cushman Tavern, which is that property on corner of King Road and Route 9. At this point, the roof is opened up on the backside into some massive, it's beyond the point of a dangerous building, and we have to take action. So unfortunately, there's some serious history in there that's going to all get demolished. And it's just a shame to see that go to waste, but I've delayed it because I've had people that do restoration projects on historical buildings that have tried to intervene and come in and want to do. It's too far gone for anybody to do anything. So proceeding on that to get rid of some of these other dangerous buildings and try to clean up some of the areas that we have to get cleaned up. So those are kind of the 2 of the main goals, but really that's my job anyway, so I don't call it a goal. It's just pushing forward and doing what we do.
Thank you, sir. Go for it.
Code enforcement, wages is the biggest increase on here, but that is because we got the added to my responsibilities as a building maintenance piece of it. So I think that was the only, outside of whatever, if there's a COLA or something, I'm not sure, but
Yeah, COLA and the longevity.
the only reason why you see the change there, and I can't remember what was it, 2,500 I think, to take on the building maintenance. I'm not going to complain about it today. I do realize the first month or 2 is going to be, but the idea is it would take an hour a week. Yeah, okay. No, it's pretty much taking 3-4 hours a day right now. But the reality is, if you want somebody that just signs off stuff to move it along, to pay contractors and things, then you got the wrong guy. I can't do that. I'll be honest, in the last 2 weeks, I've probably saved the town close to $15,000 just in very easy picking stuff that needs to change, needs to be looked at. And it's no, it doesn't reflect on anybody. I think Ryan wore too many hats to really do that job too. But the honest answer to the building maintenance side, if somebody was hired to do just that, they could stay busy enough watching out for the town and the town's best interests and getting the right deals and finding ways to save money to pay that person's salary. I'm sure of it. But an example, the heating contractors had to get up on the roofs the other day here to do the inspection of all the vents and whatnot, and there was a sensor up there that had to be changed. So they asked, we have a lift. We don't have a lift. So I did some research, found out anytime we need a lift, we rent a lift. I'm like, well, holy crap, we gotta rent a lift just to put them up there for 30 minutes. So then we have a ladder truck with the fire department. So I talked to Diane, and that was no big deal. They came around, ladder truck, and we put the guys up on the ladder and did their thing, and off they went. So we just saved from renting a lift to do a easy job. So things like that comes up so far repeatedly on a daily basis.
Department collaboration, right?
So that's a piece of it. There's a lot of work involved to that building maintenance to do everything the way we want, but I expect that for the first couple months, and then I think when I'm on top of it, that will slow down and I can do it pretty easily. Honestly, it's what I used to do, so I actually enjoy that. It's easy for me to look at some paperwork and filing I have to do and just go do my building maintenance stuff because I enjoy working with contractors and doing that. We do have all the pine trees coming down starting tomorrow that have been destroying every car in this parking lot for years and years. Those are getting cleaned up, taken care of just to avoid that damage out here. So working on some things like that, but it's an effort right now, but I can tell the council I don't care if it's my personal income or the town's money, I look at the same, and if you actually review everything, it takes a while to do that job just to make sure. Just the heating systems alone has been every day, all day, just trying to figure that whole mess out. We have an annual contract, but yet everything they're doing is being billed. So now I'm trying to figure out what does the annual contract include, and why are we getting nickel and dime for every single thing in every system we have is failing on a daily basis, seems like. So just trying to get on top of that's a full-time job in itself right now. So back to budget. Sorry about that. That was just the increase you see there, I think, was the $2,500 for taking on the building maintenance. Professional development went up for $250. That is purely because this year is certification year. So I have to finish my final certification hours for the next renew for the next 6 years. So we just bumped it up because I've got actually most of my credits now, but a few classes I got to take, and some of the ones that are doing aren't free to the municipality. I got to pay for the courses. So just to make sure we have enough to get that taken care of for this year and the certification year. That was an increase of $250. I'm going to skip over all the workers' comp stuff that has nothing to do with me. That's not having to do with those numbers. Cell phone went down. I've taken on my own phone now, so essentially the town reimbursed me, I can't remember, $35 a month. And I have my own phone now, so which is better. I think that's better anyway. So my phone, when I first started here, I told them there's no way I'm carrying two of these. I hate one of them. I'm not carrying two of them around everywhere, personal one and work one. So it was agreed when I first started that the phone was my phone to use for both, but could get into a conflict, so it's better to have it as my phone and the town just reimburse me. So there's a small decrease there. Gas is the change. That's just a guess. The new cruiser is supposed to be ready this week or next week for me, I guess. The Explorer, I'm guessing a four-wheel drive Explorer might use a little more gas than a Crown Vic. No idea. I think I come in under budget every year anyway. So we've just bumped it to make sure it handles whatever the new vehicle. And the vehicle research and maintenance, or whatever it is, repairs and maintenance, went down by half. I hardly use it. In the past, I've borrowed tires that they've had and do whatever you can. I haven't had to have any real maintenance to the 09 Vic. Car's been great. I don't know what's going to happen to it now. It's going to park down at Public Works, I guess, so it's not in the parking lot here. But it does have a good motor in it. Car runs good. Body's starting to rust up and look pretty crappy to represent the town driving around it. It's, rough on the car itself, but runs great. I've never had a problem with it. So we dropped that to $500, figuring the Explorer's gonna be a newer vehicle. I can't imagine there's gonna be much maintenance there. And if it matches their other fleet, I should be able to rob tires from them, not have to buy tires, so. That's pretty much it. So I think every year I come in under budget, and my goal is to maintain that and keep on trucking.
The only item that came up to mind to me was the mapping and microfilming. Is that something that's done end of year, or you didn't have anything last year?
Yeah, we always do. Been there every year. $1,000 last year.
But did you spend it?
Spent 155.
Oh, well, again, I share mapping with assessing. She has a budget line item too. I think it might be the same 1,000 or it's 1,500, one of the two. And I think the reasoning there was just a shared cost. I don't know who came up with breaking into code enforcement, but we both use the tax maps quite a bit. Every year you got to up the tax maps. But honestly, if anybody wanted to spend any time and look at what we've created with our mapping system for next to nothing, that's why I don't use that, because we've created a Google Earth platform that's been free and learned how to create our own KMZ files, and it is absolutely the most valuable tool in our office down there. We use it. I use it all day, every day, and public loves it, and it works out great, and it keeps me from running around everywhere to get information when I get it all in one spot. So with that said, that is purely for upping the tax maps every year. So I'm not sure how much is coming out of Kathy's budget each year or what it's been costing.
$1,000 is my point.
Yes, Kathy had always had 2,000 in her budget, and for the reason that Dennis just said, we reduced hers by 1,000. So we are gonna need the two, so, because they share it, they each gonna have 1,000, yep.
I'm good.
Our major work, when we first used it up, is done by creating those mapping files and everything. The initial work we did with Little River Land Survey. Now that they're created, it's just a matter of upping it with Corson, our GIS guy, and keeping it down cost-wise quite a bit. We went away from the standard approach that most towns use. I can't think of the name now, but you send it off. They more or less do whatever you drew for lines on your maps for the year. They print them and send them back to you, and it costs you a couple $1,000. There was just no benefit to that program. We get a lot more with our mapping service the way it is now with our GIS guy doing it, so for a lot less.
Perfect. Anything else for this division, guys, that you're seeing?
I guess it wouldn't be fair to not ask Dennis about the same thing we asked as far as for assessing benefits of a part-time person to share between you and her.
I don't want anybody. I'll be honest. It's the last thing I want. I don't work good with other people. It just, I mean, if I just know myself. I'm not in a position where I feel I have to have that. The only thing I can see where that helps is because I sacrifice a lot of times where I could be getting out doing more just field work versus just not inspections and stuff that I have to do, but out in the field more if somebody was covering the counter for public comes in. So that's the only time I could see a difference. If Joe Smith comes in and code enforcement isn't here, they cop the attitude. Well, geez, I drove all the way here. Well, you could have called me first. I do have to go on inspections. I'm in and out all day, every day. So the only advantage of having somebody is it'd be somebody probably permanently in the code enforcement office covering that window at all times. But I'll be honest, I don't think that's a big problem at all on my end. I'm trying to make a conscious effort this week and last week to stay in the office more because Kathy's gone for 2-week vacation. So if we're both gone, that makes it tough because now they can't get assessing information, they can't get code information, and so that's the only benefit I see to a person. But for somebody to do daily tasks for me, I don't want them screwing up my system. I don't want to have to train somebody to screw up my system. I don't want to have to chase somebody around to see if they're screwing up the system. I just don't see a lot of value there. There's a lot of technical stuff they're not going to be able to do, so it would really just be filing and.
So Dennis doesn't need that extra half that Kathy needs.
I do not want a half, a quarter. I don't want any.
Devil's advocate here, Dennis. You slip and fall and break your leg and you can't come in here for the next 3 months.
Hugh Sabatis and Bowden are screwed.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So from a cross-training perspective, if we needed a safety net, somebody who could do portions of, and I'm talking very basic bare bones stuff, is that something that could be done? Could we cross-train somebody to assist in a way that would be meaningful, or no, not really?
Well, how much can they actually do? That's my point. They can do some filing, and they can take down some information, and from the people, that's about it. But if you have to be certified for a lot of what I do, I don't know where that falls on how you can cross-train somebody that doesn't have the certifications to actually do it.
They're doing.
Well,
But
and
if somebody
that's
comes
it.
in and wants to know a minimum lot size or a setback or simple questions, and somebody at the counter should be able to answer those things with some basic training. So, like I say, that's back to that thing. The only advantage I see is just knowing that somebody would always be there at the window, so the window's not empty for the public.
Do other communities run lean? This is just I want to make sure I understand. Run lean as well? One code enforcement officer? Or do they have somebody that kind of sits in a backup role? In your experience.
I'm 1 day a week in Sabattis.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and honestly, at first it was a little difficult. Probably people, calling on Dave trying to figure out the hours, but people are pretty well versed over there now. I walk in Tuesday and it's a standing line. It's just,
That's what you got.
They know that I'm there that day. But with that said, I do inspections during the week, which is a lot of the workload is just all your regular inspections. That isn't 1 day a week. That's wherever it's needed, whenever it's needed.
Right.
So smaller town, though. I just started over in Bowden now at 2 hours. It's 2 hours on a Monday night. That's it. So if you want something in Bowden, but there's no building code. They're under the 4,000. They don't even have setbacks. it's an eye opener over there on how, they register vehicles, one night a week from 7:30 to 9:30. So it's and every single person in the department has different hours. Some work a couple hours during the day on a certain day. There's a whole chart of just I don't even know how the public keeps track of that. So it is different anywhere you go from what I'm seeing. But
Okay.
I would say from what I see in municipalities, everybody's running thin. But that depends on what you expect out of people for work as well. Goes both ways.
Thank you.
Appeal? Board of Appeals? Or Planning Board, I'm sorry.
Planning board, wages went up, and I believe, talking with Diane, that's purely for the person that does the minutes for the planning board. I think Jody was doing them before onto that and using it as comp time, where I think the new one's getting paid to do it, and it wasn't going to be sufficient to cover a year's with the planning board to take the minutes.
It's a part-time person that's doing it that works in Twyla's office.
So I think that was the whole gist of the change here, is just to make sure that somebody could be there for minutes. I would volunteer to do minutes, but it is impossible to do the planning board minute and try to do minutes. I can't do it, especially when you have hearings and cases. It's just not possible. I have covered sometimes on workshops or things that we don't need minutes, or things if we have nothing that's going to be in and out. I'll take the minutes for that, but outside of that, you pretty much need somebody there.
Do their minutes actually action, or they cover all the dialogue from the individual parties?
I think our minutes are way too detailed.
Ding, ding, ding,
That's
ding.
just my personal opinion on seeing other minutes and stuff that really is a recap of what was said. But we get into a lot of verbatim in minutes. But I've seen that from, before I even started. It seems always been that way. You're pretty thorough in minutes. I think Twyla's and Twyla's helping do a great job on them. But I don't know what level you if it all being recorded and stuff too, and there's backup outside those minutes, and maybe you don't have to be so thorough with them. But I will say they do a good job. The minutes are very well written. So
I know Lewiston's Finance Committee, Lewiston's Planning Board, it's actually first and second on the motion, and the motion itself. The rest is actually dialogue. You want it, you can go to the tape.
yeah, Sabattis literally doesn't put any of the discussion. They just more or less have the motion, boom, boom, and it might just say discussion what the topic was, but it doesn't have anything.
That's interesting. We are carving our videos, so they are being kept on record in some cloud or something.
Yeah. And the only reason I bring that up is because I've seen Twyla all hours of the day trying to get to that. I'm not that entertaining to actually put down what we actually go through on these meetings. It is labor intensive as hell. And the level of the planning board and that type of stuff, and I know our finance committee because I do it. The fact is, it is first and second, and what was the motion, and the rest is go to the tape if you want to hear it.
Must be some type of legal requirement, right? Minimum requirement, or is there just?
There's probably some guidelines on how to take proper minutes and stuff, but my guess is minutes aren't meant to be verbatim.
They're not.
And I wouldn't say ours are verbatim. We get into a lot
Try to
of
get a
detail.
summary of what was actually discussed. Exactly. And
But-
that's the trade-off.
I wouldn't say I don't like them. It's good having them. They're great reference material.
But they're
So.
labor intensive.
Oh, no question. Yeah, if I had to do them, I'd be
They're
I'd be
labor
bitching.
intensive. Yes.
was going to say, you're driving out, is it a redundancy? Because if we're archiving these video, do we?
That's my point.
Yeah, I get the whole redundancy piece. Do we need to take, is there a requirement somewhere that says that we have to take notes?
I believe you are, yes, for planning board, because it's a legal binding thing, and it can end up in court, so you have to have at least a record of who, votes,
Yeah, and
motions taken.
I'm not saying anything otherwise.
Right.
You have the first, you have the second, you have the motion. The rest of the dialogue building up to it is just window dressing, folks. It's labor intensive.
Questions, can you save money by going, less
Sure you can.
verbatim? Right, well, I mean, you still have to pay a person to be there.
Oh, you
Yeah, you're paying the witness to be here for the whole meeting
You're
regardless.
Right.
It's the time
If we
spending
get away
working.
from the verbatim and you go first and second, you got the guy sitting right there because he has to be at the meeting anyways.
The difference between
Whoa, I
being
didn't volunteer I think I said I don't want to do minutes.
That's right.
But that's the alternative. That's the alternative.
Yeah, I love our minutes the way they are. The verbatim is awesome. I don't think we could live without it.
Great job, Twyla.
She does a great job. That is my point. Yeah.
We are trying, though, to condense it and to make it shorter, so we'll continue to do that if that's what you prefer to.
Even $1,000 for the right documentation isn't a bad money, but as time moves forward, that's not gonna get less, so I think it'd be the idea of just being practical in what we do.
My guess, we're going to come in under that, but we knew we had to bump
You
it
need
up.
to do
'Cause
something.
the arrangement before is gone, and now we have somebody that's being paid part-time to be there, so.
Anything else for planning board that catches people's attention?
The advertising went up a little bit. I think that's based on knowing the comp plan stuff should be finalized this year and just taking care of that. Contracted services, that would be the town planner. You'll see the initial is way up, but the town manager's is a small increase based on an option that Ben, our town planner, provided to us. And on behalf of the planning board, I did request they be here to tout that. If they wanted to push for the full enchilada, the 34,000, planning board stepped back from that, and they're to support the same as the manager's recommendation. So that's where they stand, is the 21,250.
I talked to Don too, way back when I first said I was gonna put it back down and just, we can probably use Ben as needed, and, he agreed with that, so.
What is the additional $1,250?
The additional what?
$1,250 over last year's budget, going from 20 to 2150.
Let's see. Ben gave us option one.
That was the second option. That was the dollar amount.
Okay. The reason, because I thought we had it set up on, right now we're in the last year of
Yeah,
the
Of
previous,
the
so it's a lot
contract,
amount to get to the
20,000,
20.
yeah.
he's
Oh.
gonna do how many hours at that?
Yeah, and it looks like I didn't bring the page that he had listed that option on, but it more or less said that she's been working under the $20,000 contract since she started it, and it was time for a slight increase based on what he looked at the time it was going to take him to do that same service at the level of service that Amanda had provided. So you bumped it up $1,250. So it's purely a raise for the town planner is really what that
Are
option
we still
was.
coming under
5 hours a
Amanda's
week.
contract, or is it
Until
with Ben?
July,
And then Ben is in July when this kicks in.
then Amanda's contract would be over and he'd start the new one.
Does that actually have to go out to, do you have to do a bid on process on that since it's changing, or is that not necessarily fall underneath that criteria as far as for contracted services? Not sure. Does that?
I don't know, did you go out to bid? I don't know. They went out to
Originally,
bid.
I wasn't here when they did it. I'm not sure how that selection process went with Amanda. There was a lot of discussion on that when all of a sudden Ben was introduced into the picture, and
'Cause it
we
was
were
still
told
under
it's still
Amanda.
under the contract.
That happened at an
A
LDC
man,
meeting. I remember it clean as day.
yeah. So that
We were good, because we have one more
The-
year on the contract.
right.
Yeah.
So what has to happen as it expires? I don't know. I mean, can you extend an existing contract, or do you have to start all over again? And I wasn't here for the first process. So I don't know what you did.
My thought on this is, where Ben has been working with us for the last year and has been involved in the comp plan and everything else that's going on. We went out to bid and somebody else came in, you would have to start all over with somebody with all the institutional knowledge, and,
If the
I
comp
use
plan's not
sub-
done before the
I
budget.
know I've been pushing hard that I wanted it done before
Yeah.
but
I mean, if you want to, we can certainly
what
go
I-
out
what
to
I
bid,
wanna-
but.
What I want to know is that it's actually copacetic. We have something in our purchase selling policy that we can extend it to Ben, but if it doesn't, we've at least addressed the question, rather than putting something in the budget now for July that we can't do.
Let me look at it.
yeah, I think that would be more Diane. I'm not sure.
I'll
about that.
research that.
I guess one of the questions would be too on that is, mean, I've seen Amanda when she first came on, the reasons Amanda first came on, and I think the town's really benefited over the years with Amanda and then Ben as far as for getting that planning board where it is today, because it definitely helped a lot.
Right.
You know, moving forward, the question would be is, a lot of hurdles we jumped over for why we got Amanda has actually been
Addressed.
you know? Not saying that we don't need someone like Ben or Amanda on staff, but who was actually, I mean, whose supervision does actually fall under? I mean, is it one of those things where, and the only reason I say that moving forward, it would be nice, I mean, when I think of a planner, I don't think of someone that just actually gives opinion to the planning board. You think of someone actually that kind of plans, you know what I mean? So, I mean, some of the things that we're looking for as a town moving forward, you know, some of the planning in different areas of town, I mean, whether or not it's just a service that we don't really have internally people to do in a sense, I mean, I don't think Ben needs to, or Amanda needs to redo what Dennis' job does, I mean, in a sense, overlap it. If, again, it would just be nice to know moving forward what that details, you know what I mean?
The other thing too is we can always tap into AvCog as a resource as well, because they provide planning services.
They do, with the exception of the last year and a half, it's been non-existent, but just because their staff is depleted and they've had a couple key people that did that retire, and so they've been not much help. Not that we've had to use them much, but
I guess my point would be, we always talk as a community about long-term planning,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, it's if we actually have a planner on staff, in a sense, or have a planner on retainer, it'd be nice to think that we are doing some legitimate long-term planning that's actually on paper that we can see. You know, this is where Lisbon ought to move, and this is what we ought to do. And I mean, that's just a thought. I mean, stuff like the redoing comprehensive plan, stuff like that.
well, things like regular tasks of the planning board, we don't need a planner there. I've tried to explain that, you know. I'll give you an example. We have a site plan review right now that I have to review the whole project, all the criteria. They sent it to the planner, so he just did the same thing I did and sent me his report, which was exactly what I already did. So I'm the type of guy that I don't like that. I have other things to be doing. If somebody else is going to review it and they want somebody else to review it, okay, then don't have me do it, because this, you know, that just doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense. So having some discussions like that with the planning board now, and you know, they're better. I guess I would go with Fern saying, I've been screaming that for years, that a planner
So
should
if
be
we're
looking at
a
long-term
comp
planning.
plan done by June, what does he do next year?
Right.
I know they've been working on goals sitting through the planning boards, but I guess that's the reason I brought up the idea is, you know, it's a $20,000 or $21,000 figure on the thing, and who actually oversees to say that this is what they're doing and what he's not doing. I mean, that to me is more important, just so at the end of the year we can justify, you know, what the dollars are spent on. I mean, but again, that's probably a discussion for a different night. And I mean, do I think actually someone there as a planner is actually beneficial? Absolutely.
What we're getting for the value of what we did. Can we make that note to be able to readdress?
I think that would be a good discussion to have with the planner.
Presently, what is the job description for the planner?
The planner went over it, and again, I won't
Assist
speak
the planning board, really, is
when the planning board first. The planning board first
To
came on.
assist the planning board? So we're paying somebody $20,000 to assist.
It was well spent money when it first came on.
Yeah, but at some point, I mean,
right. The
it
196
seems like
master
it's
plan was
redundant,
the
and we're
196.
just throwing cash at somebody to do somebody else's job that's already done it. To me, that's just.
Well, that's my point. Is if you have some larger
$20,000
goals for the town for a planner, then that it makes sense to have a planner there. But what are those goals? And I think that's where the discussion has to be had with the planner. Amanda came on, and it was right in the middle of an access management thing, which there was a mess, and she helped rewrite that, and then did the 196 design standards and master plan. Those are two major accomplishments. So those things are done now. And the comp plan, every 10 years you got to do, and we're just about done that. So I don't have any other big pieces that I'm aware of that need to be done, unless we're looking at some long-term planning. And
So it sounds to me like you just said, Diane, you know, we have the option of AvCog. So wouldn't we, I mean, I think it would be financially responsible of us to just do something as an on-service, like when we need it, not just to have somebody there. So when a plan comes into place, they're there. You know, I'm $20,000 when there's no projects.
What about the economic development piece? We have Tracy sitting there. Is there a need that we're not tapping that actually would have that to be able to put that to another goal?
Well, there's no question the town planner has spent a lot of time with economic development. I think I've been saying for a couple of years, it all comes out of planning board, but I don't think that's
not where they lie.
I don't think that's fair, really. I mean, there's a big split time frame there, and a lot of the time this past year has been not on planning board side, but it's been on economic development. So.
And I just don't want that piece lost sight of. Because
no, I appreciate it. I didn't think of it until you brought it up.
Yeah.
I'd say we really need to meet with the planner and the planning board and discuss what the need is going forward, if there's a real need or, if it's duplicative.
Well, sounds like we bring in economic development too, so that way we can talk about it.
They all need to be here and we need to discuss that together. If, is this money well spent?
Right, I mean, just because we have roads that we need to do we have a contractor that we're paying $100,000 on standby? So when the project happens, I mean, to me, it's
what I can answer is I don't know the world of planning very well, but if all of a sudden we do have a big project and we need a planner, I don't know how readily available they are and at what cost. I don't have that answer for you to know, so you can kind of look at that situation, but
to this point, with the fact is we had 3 or 4 things, one right after the other. What's the next one coming in the pipeline is the way I would approach it. What are we going to focus on next?
Well, I think it should be the mill location, which is clearly in every report, and I won't get into that tonight, but now that's something that a planner could have some value in if it's going to help facilitate that, not just come up with the idea and get paid $20,000. Well, put it on paper. Give us a roadmap. How are we going to achieve it? How are we going to get there? And what's it going to look like? And do the work. That's where I find the
To me, it's the same thing.
The disconnect.
I mean, what does this look like? What could this be? And how do you make it happen? I mean, and those are the type of things I see a planner actually helping us come and sit down with us, have a piece of paper, and saying, look, this is your village, and this is what I see it could be, and this is how you get there. You mean that, to me, has a benefit that's beyond dollar value. I mean,
those frameworks develop realistic timelines to set goals to start to drive towards those things. So that's the whole reason any community would want a planner. I mean, if you take a look at some of the projects that you've already touted, these things were on a piece of paper, drawn out and said, we're going to do this. And now it's a reality. If you drive up and down the 196 corridor, you can see those things. So it's just a matter of saying what projects are next and what are we going to use them for. I think the only thing that's driving this discussion is the fact that Amanda's contract ends. And so she was introducing what she thought was a good fit for us to wrap some projects that still had some loose ends to tie off. If those are going to tie off this year, then sure, why wouldn't we want to have a discussion about whether or not we want to spend that amount of money right now if there's nothing for them to do? But who knows? Like you said, if there's something that, well, it's not right now, but 6 months from now we're going to have a need, well, then find a way to maybe, if there's some use for the ED that can be done right now, get them kind of bridge the gap until we get to that next project.
There's plenty of long-term planning the town needs to do. It's just a matter of the idea how it's directed, and if because there's really no one on staff that's actually designated as a long-term planner. So, I mean, it just to me, it just can't be someone that sits with the planning board. It needs to be someone that's actually working under a bigger umbrella, whether it's...
The ideas are there. We have the studies. All that stuff's done. We don't need more ideas. We know what needs to be done. It's now how we...
Going to Dennis's point, and I don't know a ton about this guy, but I do know that he works in Wyndham, and he helped them develop their plan, and they're very similar to us. So a lot of information that he's going to have and used over there will have applications here that could help us maybe skip some pitfalls and spending money that we don't need to spend. So yeah, while I'm not excited about spending $21,500, if it saves us money long term, having somebody who's in the know and understands, hey, you could do that, but let me draw something up that might make a little bit more sense.
It's forward is the key. I mean, right now we don't have anybody on staff that's designated as long-term planning because everybody's just doing their thing that they got to do every day. So
we got to make sure there's something there for them. But yeah.
Presently, what projects has she? So she's had what, a 6-year contract? How many years?
Well, I've been here 6, and she started before me, so yeah.
Okay, so what projects have been completed that she has helped assist with?
Like I say, access management was an ordinance, but a lengthy one that they developed. I think that was the first thing she was brought in for. And then off the top of my head, the biggest achievements would be the 196 master plan, the 196 design standards, 196 design guidelines. Those are pretty extensive documents that took a while to put together.
Home occupation ordinance. We did that.
Was that one that was done with the planner?
I worked with her
So some ordinance stuff, and then the bigger to me, on the planning side, it's the 196 stuff is your planning. The ordinance stuff, that's why I asked planning board to be here, because if they put me in front of you, that's probably not what the planning board wants to hear. So I told them, you don't want me to represent them tonight. I do ordinance stuff, so again,
Right, well, that's
I
kind
keep
of like
running
what I'm
into
saying,
that.
it's
I'm like, well, look,
redundant.
I'm not going to do it if somebody else is doing it. I have no problem with that, but two of us doing it doesn't make any sense.
So then my next question is, the ones that you're saying, how long did it take from start to finish to complete it?
Lengthy.
Well, no, I'm thinking,
Again, I feel the comp plan
5
should have
years.
took 3 months,
5
and
years,
we're
'cause
over a
she-
year now, and we still don't have it. So different
The comp
opinion.
plan, she had a year invested in that.
Yeah.
I think we're
So 5
splitting a lot
years.
of hairs right here,
Right,
and what we
that's
should really be doing is concentrating
budget.
on what's here, and if we're gonna have a little something afterwards with her and whoever else in the planning board, I think that's.
I think it
where
would
we
be
go.
very
we should
good
try to stick
for
what's
you
going
guys
on
to
right
meet
now.
with the planner and ask those questions about what can you do for the town.
Because there's a lot of what's going on in this room.
Yeah.
Dennis can't answer them all.
Yeah, I would recommend just leave it in as is for now, but with.
Could revisit it.
Future discussion.
With discussion on it.
Put it in the parking lot.
By all means.
All right, then under professional, that dropped by over half.
Thanks, Chris.
That actually went up last year. That was for stuff that we were needing for the comp plan and everything, so we had to increase that budget. I think if you looked at the last comp plan the town did, it's been a while, it was either 10 or 20, I think it was like $20,000 or something it cost. We haven't spent virtually a penny on it yet, and that's honestly just me trying to get them to get this work done and not find ways to cost money. It doesn't need to. I've tried to do all the research and provide them the stuff, and at some point we're going to spend a little bit when it comes to printing the stuff and things like that, but for the most part, we should be running well under budget on that. I think the only big piece that came out of the budget last year was buying using it to buy the projector and stuff for the planning board. Came out of that line item, so if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have spent virtually anything this last year, because he's doing all the work under that original contract of $20,000 under Amanda, so we dropped that quite a bit just to get through the comp plan this year with the printed stuff, but that should be down to real low after this year.
Anything else?
And the office supplies went up a little bit. Again, that's just based on if I need to get some stuff for comp plan, but everything else I think was running pretty steady.
Board of Appeals,
Stayed the same. No changes.
Health Officer.
No changes. Other than your
Anything else for Dennis in general? Finance. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Let's take two. I just lost one counselor. Anybody else have to hit the restroom?
No, but I would welcome to walk around and stretch my legs.
Alan, I was also gonna say, I would also recommend having town clerk and economic development go before me. That way I can just do finance, tax, and CIP.
Perfect.
I love that idea. That's good.
Perfect.
Just shut off the camera for a minute then?
Thank you. Yep.
Of course, it is recording.
Yeah, it was the new Auburn Bridge.
We're live. We're back.
We're live?
Yeah,
We're back.
it's the new Auburn Bridge.
We're going back to town clerk, then we'll do economic development so we can finish up with finance and then the capital improvement. Let's start with your goals, Twyla.
Okay, yes. We have 4 goals that you had identified when you did your goals this year. Records retention. This work will take quite a lot of time, I wanted you to know, as we recreate a finding aid index or database to identify and locate the over 600 boxes in the vault. 4 hours of the 20-hour part-time position will be dedicated to this, but my guess is that the 20-hour position tasks currently being provided will use up all that 20-hour time. But once we get into this next fiscal year, and should this be the case, I think the following year would require some special consideration for funding if we just aren't able to accomplish it with the hours that we have. But we are planning to start and do some work on it. Codifying the ordinances more frequently. We have a plan to do that after the council meetings, to send them over. It's going to be, I think, a little easier to do that now that we have a part-timer covering the workshops, so that person is downloading and uploading meeting videos and posting agendas and that sort of thing, so it frees up some time, so I have the additional time needed to prepare the codifications to send them out. Records restoration will be a focus this year. You have funded or have in your budget funds for restoring Lisbon's record books. $10,000 has been set aside from other sources for that restoration project, and earlier tonight I presented the books for everybody to take a look at that project. Employee training and succession planning has been started, and our part-time position is covering the important areas needed to keep that office running smoothly. So that are our goals in a nutshell.
And your budget reflects those goals?
Yes.
What would you present for what you got for highlights for your budget then?
All right, so we'll begin with the things that are changed. Under your temporary wages, that's about $500 less than last year because this was a presidential election year last year that we budgeted, so this year is not a presidential election year. And that's the line for clerks and election wages. The next line that's changed was mileage, which is about $1,500 more to cover an IIMC conference in Alabama. And the next line for professional development is about $500 more to cover the extra training for that conference. And the next line that changed was meals and lodging, and that's about $100 more, but the clerk is expecting to share a room at all conferences, so that may save us some money, although it's $100 more. The FICA retirement, workers' comp, medical insurance, unemployment were all calculated by HR. So the next line that's different is contracted services. That's about $1,000 less because, again, last year was a presidential election year. So the next line is postage. That's about $300 less because, again, last year was a presidential year and we mailed a lot more absentees, so this year we're not planning to mail that many. The printing line also is about $400 less because we'll need less ballots than we did last year. And under professional services, this is about $2,500 less because council meeting minutes no longer get updated on the clerk-based site.
Healthy shopping list. Do you have amounts for those that maybe we could see them just
Yes.
to know what we're spending by
Your
those?
biggest piece of this professional services is your codification work. For instance, yesterday I approved a $5,000 bill for the last codification that we just sent in. We sent one in November, and then we sent another one in just a couple of days ago. So the bulk of that is codification. Yeah.
Thank you, Carol.
You're welcome. And the next line is repair and maintenance. That's about $900 less, basically because we consolidated polling places. So we returned the extra equipment to the state. So we saved some rental equipment, the DS200s. And then office supplies, there is no change.
Any questions at all?
Just under the temporary, I have a quick one. You had said that it was reduced, but when I look at it, it looks like it was an increase.
Temporary
Yeah.
changes?
Yeah.
And she mentioned it was actually in the clerk, so
I was going to say maybe I just didn't hear it, but I didn't.
but I didn't
Well,
see the other line.
temporary in 2018 was about $4,992.
Mhm.
And temporary wages for this budget is $5,500.
Right, so it's an increase of
Yeah.
500.
Oh, I went the
Yeah.
wrong direction.
That's okay. That's why I just wanted to make sure that was the case. Okay, that's.
And the reason being is in a primary,
Yeah.
we have a Republican ballot, Democrat
Yeah.
ballot, Green ballot, Libertarian, and we have other, so you have to have more staff to run a primary, just more physical labor.
Okay.
In November, you get the same number of ballots, you get 2 ballots. So there will be more. And truthfully, this particular June, we are going to need to have another person there on site just to instruct voters how to use the ranked choice ballot. So we're planning to gear up
That
for
quickly?
instructions. The state of Maine Secretary of State's office is going to be providing us with the tools that we need. We'll memorize that.
Start with Don. If he says no, then go after Scott Hall.
Right.
I think it will be easier than we think, but it still will require explanations at the polling place.
Any other questions at all? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Economic development. start with your goals.
Okay, within the goals, these are basically, a lot of them is kind of what I've been doing ongoing since I've been here. But one of the things that has been something that I've been wanting to do, along with some of the other departments, is to create a brochure of for development. So when folks are coming into Lisbon looking to open up a business, that they'll have like a booklet that explains everything to them, the steps, code enforcement, permits, costs, those types of things. So I've been pulling together some templates, and I'm going to be pulling in codes and the clerk and assessing and working with them to put something together. To continue with the business visitations, I think the businesses always look forward. I mean, they always thank me for coming in and saying hi and checking on them.
On that one,
Yes.
one of the things that I like of recent, the open houses and those that we've had a good run of in the last 5-6 weeks, that's great. I'd love to be able to see that if you had any of those visitations, that bring it to us what's actually there, the soundbite from that business. If they
Oh, okay.
have anything to do, anything to report it back to us to keep it on our radar, that would be perfect.
Sure.
I remember one of the first things I did when I was running is that you hosted a breakfast here with the business.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really cool opportunity to be able to get some free advice from the local small businesses here, and it was very well represented. So anything of that actually could get back to us, that would be perfect.
Yeah. And that's, one of the things too, Diane and I did one, I think it was last fall, that what we did is we did a after hours with town government, and we went to downtown, and we had it at the Masons, and then we invited all the folks to come in there, and it gave an opportunity. We had Ryan, they had questions regarding any types of projects, what was happening with the downtown grant and those types of things, and that went very well. Sometimes it's difficult to get them in for the breakfast, so I think trying to mix it up a little bit, whether I go back and do some breakfast, business breakfast forums, as well as the evening hours types of things. So those are definitely the opportunities. A lot of these folks are small businesses. They don't have the staff that they could do like a chamber event or something like that. So it's trying to coordinate, and that was why I kind of wanted to start something like this. So that gave them the opportunity. Continue networking with the local agencies and developers and the best business potentials. I think that has helped tremendously within the community of bringing in people to open up business here. I keep a vacant properties, log, so when folks are calling me saying I'm looking for a place to open up a business, I can get into the details with them. What are you looking for? The type of square footage, what do you need? And then I can pull out, I have a binder that I put all the properties in. So I'm constantly, when I'm out and about, that I keep an eye as far as on what's out there for properties as well. So an inventory. And continue to seek grant opportunities. So far we've been successful. So hopefully to keep the trend going.
Perfect. Thank you. And your goals incorporated here in your budget?
Yes.
Great. Go ahead.
There's just really a few changes as far as that you notice. The first one is regarding the salary, and the salary, the increase will be longevity, plus while trying to bring up a little bit to kind of compete with other economic developers. Advertising went down $4,000, so left $1,000 in that budget. Again, after we get into doing the grants and those types of things, we've got to do the advertisement. Supplies, operating supplies. Well, sorry, go back to cell phones went down. Again, it's just getting the monthly rate as far as utilizing my cell phone. And then operating supplies went up $1,000. one of the things in doing the brochures is to really make something that's professional looking. So I wanted the cost in there to cover for printing and glossy type paper and those types of things. So when somebody comes in, that it's not just something photocopied, but it is something professionally done. And that's it. If you got any questions.
Any questions on content for economic development, guys?
Sure. What was the brochure line going to be under again? I know you just talked about it. What was it again?
Yeah,
Supplies?
well, I have two lines, yes, under the operating supplies. So the office supplies is just strictly for the office, where the operating supplies is I can cover, a lot of different things like ribbon cuttings, materials, and copying and those types of
The reason I
things.
asked that question is when I go back to advertising, with the drop, what drove it to be 5,000 last year and now we're able to cut 4 out of it this year?
It was mostly because I was looking for Brandon, and I wanted to make sure that I had money in there to cover that cost.
And, okay, that makes perfect sense then. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, content? Thank you.
Thank you.
Circling back to finance, right?
Yes. So for my department goals, I have the cross-training and succession planning as the other departments do. The big one, obviously, is Munis Go Live. We had a very productive meeting with some higher-ups at Munis and got a nice solid plan in place that I'm finally happy with, so that's looking good. And my third goal is I would really like to revamp the CIP plan to be more encompassing and more comprehensive than it is now. Currently, it's functional. It does its job. I want to do more, and I haven't had the time so far. You guys have provided that front office manager, so that's starting to open up some time for things like that. So that's my main goal outside of Munis for next year, is to get that developed and in front of council next year.
Now, we heard you correctly the first night when we had Ryan strong-arm you. Your budget may not reflect that for the Munis implementation. Do you have anything tonight that you would add to that, or is that going to be a later discussion?
My budget doesn't reflect anything. It's all under technology.
Okay.
Other than my time.
So you don't see it coming in this, but the technology line to address that goal?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I think we addressed it there.
Perfect.
Yep.
That said, you have the floor. Go ahead.
All right. There's the biggest change I have this year versus last year is professional development and like meetings and dues, memberships, and those things have all gone up primarily because Carrie needs some extra training. There's some additional training that I need to be doing this year that I didn't need to do last year. Wages is just a COLA. And then the finance department, it's only my wage and the AP clerk. It does not include the front. That's under the tax collectors. Medical insurance, that went up as from HR. And then the rental of equipment line I took out. I went back over the past 3 years. We have not used it for 3 years. It's an old line item that's just been carrying forward from year to year. So we took that out. And then supplies in the office stayed the same.
Any questions on content for Lydia? Do you want to move the tax? Oh, sorry, do you have a question?
So you were saying it's going to be in technology, so was there a change in technology's budget from our last meeting that we had to actually reflect the idea of what it's going to take, or is that you think is actually going to be absorbed into technology budget? It's already there?
Right. Okay. I think we had already included that, and the increases were already there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Munis ponied up too when they came, and I think it's important that we point that out.
That is true. They ended up
$41,000 or $44,000 worth of fees that would have landed on our doorstep. They ate. because they were interested in having a vested relationship with us, and they realized it hadn't been as smooth as they'd roll out to their other clients. And I think that was the theme throughout that meeting. I don't want to steal you guys' thunder, but I just think it's important to point that out.
2 years of a product, if it's not being used, I mean, they have to assume that it's actually not going to stay if it's not used.
Right. So I think that was generally their biggest concern.
I just want to make sure we had the funds somewhere, that's all.
Yep.
Thanks, Lydia.
You are welcome. Under tax collector, the biggest change you're going to see is under wages, and that is a reflection of the turnover and the addition of the front office manager. The change in overtime versus temporary is just an allocation. It wasn't being allocated properly, so I've adjusted that for this year to make sure that we're reflecting those wages correctly. Mileage stayed the same. Professional development, I increased 300 again because of the turnover and whatnot. FICA, retirement, workers' comp, medical insurance, all through HR. Postage and delivery went up 500. We have anticipated additional tax liens that need to go out, I think it was. So we've upped that a little bit. And then supplies office stayed the same.
The one that caught my attention was the addition with the 2,500.
Again, that some of that was taken from overtime before, instead of the temporary people that we had coming in were just being put into the overtime line. So I've taken some out and reallocated it, yeah.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yep.
Any other questions on content for?
Just on the wage line, part of that change is the restructuring because part of that salary for what Carrie's doing was coming out of the sewer
correct,
budget.
yep.
Now that's between Public Works and sewer, so you're going to see the reduction on the Public Works budget under admin.
So that's right, I had to absorb all
Yeah.
of that this year.
Yeah, so her budget has to absorb the whole thing.
Yeah.
Public Works got to see it be reduced. Their budget was reduced.
Lucky them.
Fortunate taxpayers, all comes out of the same pot.
It does.
Yeah,
It does.
yeah.
Just a different
One person.
department.
And I believe everybody has a copy of the CIP plan. There's a couple of things that I wanted to particularly point out under the Parks and Recreation Department. The current mileage, hours, and the yearly estimated costs are about the same, but the current mileage and hours are from last year. He got those to me yesterday, and I have updated it, but I didn't print out a 26-page packet, just for one page. So that has been updated.
Thank you.
And then one other thing to note on the forecasted lease purchase payments. We have 6 lease purchase agreements that their final payment is in 2019 to the tune of $96,143. So that'll help offset the additional sewer cost and whatnot. Oh, well, not the sewer, because that comes out of the sewer bill, but the additional financing that we have to do. Right. No, we have more financing that's coming up. But that's nice, and I know Diane had brought up the possibility of paying those final payments out of undesignated versus raising additional taxes for it, so I wanted to put that out on the table as an option for you. Currently, I have it in the debt service budget for this current year, so it's just a matter of
What is that dollar amount?
$96,000.
That'd be the total for 19.
Yeah. Well, that's the total of the ones that are going to be paid off. There are the total lease purchase payments is $308.
Of the fund balance discussion, if we go down that line, I don't know if I know where we stand on what we have for a recommendation there.
I've got that original, yeah, it's got to be revised some.
Yeah, we'll get that
I think what I ought to do is add to it that debt service amount so that you see the whole thing, and then when you take stuff away that you're not going to fund, like the library shelving, that was what, 60,000?
Yep.
So there's part of that 96 I think it's worth looking at that because it's not gonna be in future budgets. And,
We take the savings now by
Well,
paying for
right.
what we paid for over.
exactly, and it's not gonna show up in the next budget we do a year from now, so it might be worth it for this year to do it.
You have my attention, because if I remember right, on PW, we took a $200,000 line item out for the loader. What was the item?
Yeah, it was either a wheeler or a loader.
Wheeler.
Yeah.
Wheeler,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, so you've got some work to do on the undesignated fund balance, so I think when we flush it all out, you're probably gonna have enough to do it, and that would help this budget tremendously.
That last circle around meeting where we actually talk about the list and those kinds
Yep.
of things, if you can give us an updated recommendation with that in it, I'd love to see that, just for that reason.
One thing I did add to this CIP that was not in last year is I added a column on all of them called funding. And on that side of it, it's how I would recommend we fund it.
Thank you.
Obviously, that's not set in stone. It's just a recommendation. And that goes with everything that's on the CIP. Just because it's on here for next year doesn't mean we're spending it for next year. It just means I need it on your radar because it's going to happen.
I was gonna drill down on that because, I know that we talked the sidewalk snow blower with the sander and the sweeper. I know we use it for just sanding and sweeping now and not snow blowing.
Yeah.
So that 2788, I just wondered how true is that?
Yeah.
As far as a maintenance number, is that halved? Is that 60%? Good questions that we can dig into sometime down the line.
Yeah. I can't speak to that.
No, I don't expect that you could. It's not a big. I just put I put it up there to say we can figure out.
Yeah.
That'll be one of the areas. Say if we're not using it for the snow removal, then and I understand that's probably where most of the maintenance lies for it got broke. Hitting snowbanks at god awful speed.
Concrete blocks and pitching them through the.
Yeah, it's less likely to have more malfunctions from a sanding, sweeping perspective.
Yeah.
So we may see that line reduce, just for an example.
For the fire department, there is 2 fire trucks in the forecast for this coming up year. Originally, or last year, one of them was scheduled for, it was either 2020 or 2021. Conversations with Nate, he does not believe that it will make it that far and that it needs to be sooner. I've already reached out to a couple of banks to get possible financing and what the difference would be doing 1 fire truck versus 2, so I have those numbers. And there again, we have a reserve, but there's only like $170,000 in that, so that's not a substantial amount to bring that cost down. But those are 2 items that are going to have to be looked at.
Can you go back to Nate and ask that we actually get a report of exactly why that thing is not going to make it the year that it was actually scheduled?
Yep.
We had a capital improvement plan for a reason. If it needs to be adjusted and accelerated and changed, he should be able to speak to that.
Will do.
Especially for that kind of investment. Now these are payments? I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong ones. It was $120,000 wheeler. That's what I threw the wrong figure out there. So basically, we're looking at new gear and 1 ton with a plow for $60,000 for PW. And then the 2 fire pieces of apparatus that we talked about. And that's going to have to be a bond.
For the fire? I am able to do a capital lease for it. It does not have to be a bond.
But we're above the 250.
We still have to follow those bond procedures.
Because we're still going to have to actually put it out.
Right.
It still has to be a referendum item, right?
Yep.
And that's again why Nate should be able to very specifically speak to that.
Yeah.
We're going to need that information to be able to educate a public about why we need this item.
From a guy who previously used to.
Spec these. Right. Anything else in content, guys, that you're seeing from the CIP?
One of Twyla's goals was restoration. I have included that on the CIP for the 10,000 with municipal revenue. as a possible, as a recommended funding source, so that we have that on our radar as well. She had given me quotes of how much it was going to cost, and the total was $40,000, so we split that up over 4 years. So that'll help her achieve her goals there.
Where am I missing that one?
Under town buildings and infrastructure, last line item. It doesn't have page numbers on it. I can put that on there.
I got it. Thank you.
And then after the town's CIP is what I have included, what the water department and what the school department provided me.
When you say municipal revenue,
That means it's budgeted in this current year.
It's
I-
not,
I-
though.
She.
No, we took it out, it's under,
Oh, it's under undesignated, so that
yeah.
needs to be updated. I apologize on that one.
Okay, so it'd be 10,
So we had
Yep.
originally had it budgeted,
We
but
did, and
we
we
took
took
it out.
it out, yeah.
the remaining three $10,000 payments would then be consistent with 2020 through 2022, but that first line would be out of undesignated.
Yes.
All right,
Exactly.
fine. Gotcha.
This question is on the capital improvement plan. Are you presenting to the planning board what's actually listed here tonight, or will it not?
No, I'm gonna have her give us the modified one.
Yeah, we'll
She'll email
we'll
that
update
to me,
it
and I'll
depending
send
on-
it to Dennis.
what I would actually ask too.
Yep.
Don't put Dennis in the position of being our spokesperson associated with this. If you could do just a brief summary to this
Yep.
and send it directly to the planning board.
Sure.
That way that hits the highlights as we would have got it from you here. I think it would be better received. I mean,
And it goes to
I
planning board?
I sat through a meeting last week, last year. Unfortunately, I can't make Thursday nights. I would normally pick that up. But I think it would be best coming from the driving source rather than having it come from Dennis, is my point. Not that
Certainly
anything
does
against
make
staff,
sense.
it's just putting staff in an awkward position.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I bring that up.
So the library shelving and carpeting project, I think the shelving one,
That got next.
yeah, I was gonna say it's out of the
Yeah,
work,
we'll
but the
take that
carpet
off.
is still in the game.
Yes.
Before end of year, right?
Yeah.
That was the goal.
And then
I missed the opportunity to ask Dennis that. I thought that was.
the boiler upgrade was part of the heating system to resolve that issue so that they could gain that shelving back, correct?
That's the end game here.
Yep.
They have not lost the shelving. We are going to address it
Well,
with whatever comes out of
they're
this.
gonna gain back their shelving so we don't have to buy more expensive shelving.
Right.
So you wanna, we'll take that library shelving off,
And just leave it as the carpet project?
yes.
Yeah, and then 'cause that number will be a lot more favorable after that. Yeah, and then the heating line looks good, because then we know we're gonna be able to gain back the other piece.
Well, if we're addressing the carpeting issue within this year, we're talking forecast 6/30/2018, the entire line disappears.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know
Yeah.
that we'll have
Oh.
time to do that. That's quite a project, because she's gonna have to move everything out of that.
It's a good point.
I don't think she's gonna have time between now and year end, and the other thing is, we wanna,
But if we put it out to bid and we encumber it, you have it and it would lapse into next year anyway, so it's still on the same thing. We get to the same place.
We already got
Or
one
we-
quote from an in-town guy, so it'd just be a matter of getting a couple other quotes to see where that lands, right? Right.
I'm just looking for the intent of the plan, is where I was going. If you don't think it's gonna actually be done by year end, I'm comfortable with
no,
hearing what you're here
and
saying.
and because it's gonna just be a one-time thing, I would take it from undesignated, just appropriate from,
Which reallocation for what we were already talking about for the heating of that facility, you're just gonna put it into this to be able to be done. Right. I thought that was where we were landing, right? Instead of actually converting over to natural gas, which we don't believe is
Right,
viable.
right.
We were gonna earmark that fund to be able to address that need between the two, because we had, what, 59,000 or whatever it was for a figure for the.
yeah, we've
two
got money
facilities.
already set aside to do
To do
the
the-
upgrade to her heating system. That's all set and done. It's well, we might even have enough to do the carpet, you're right. It's
I
already
think
out of the
'cause you've got the other
undesignated, so
piece
yeah,
for the
you're
fi-
right, that should just come right
Whole line
off.
can come out?
Take the whole thing out, yeah.
As long as we get a valid
Yeah, I
PO,
think
it
we've-
passes a straight face test, and it
Yeah, I
wouldn't be
think
in this
so.
field CIP.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Got it.
You're feeling what I'm putting down now.
Cool.
Thank you, Lydia. Thank
You're most
Yes,
welcome.
thank you.
Water? Does
What?
water have a component here?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's behind there.
It's in there, I'm not sure if it's something that we actually.
I thought it was
It's
all
not-
rolled. I
I'm
thought it was
not.
all rolled
Did I
into,
miss
yeah.
that? How could I miss
You
that?
have to,
Yeah.
it's in there.
No, I didn't see it on there, yeah.
Better be in there, it was supposed to be in there.
Yeah, we talked about stand price back in 20,
Yep.
later on anyways.
On page
There.
31.
Okay, gotcha.
And then following that is the schools.
Okay,
Which we have no control over either.
No, that's not prepared by me.
right. Okay.
It all has to go to the planning board though,
Yeah.
so we'll send it all over.
No, I just
He missed
remember
it.
they're all here for a presentation. That's the
Yeah.
requirement. So good. Anything else for tonight? Next meeting is a regular meeting, and then we have
The final
Police and
budget, yep, final budget. Yeah, and that's the same night as the school's public hearing for their budget.
Tuesday's meeting starts with a workshop for the TIF. I just had
6.
Diane, you're gonna see one agenda. You're gonna see it saying workshop 6 to 7, and it's gonna go right through the regular agenda, so she doesn't have to do 2. Anything else? Let's get the hell out of here. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, any question on the